So what is an antibody test or a serology test? What is it? And why it is said that it is very fast and a cheap technique to perform? But the question arises, can it detect viruses? As compared to a swab test, the antibody test is very fast and easy to perform. This means that the test can be performed in around 15 to 20 minutes very easily. It is also a cheap technique to do. It is cheaper as compared to the swab test, around 4 to 5 times cheaper. It is also a do-it-yourself test, which means you do not require any other person's help to perform the test. You can perform it by yourself in the comfort of your own house. And lastly, no lab and expertise is required to perform the test. This means that no lab personnel is required who will perform the test or do sample collection, or no machinery is required to perform this simple test. So why is this test called as an antibody test? Actually, it detects antibodies in your blood. Antibodies in your blood are generated by the immune system whenever you get an infection. So this technique can only detect past infections, and no current infections that are present in your body can be detected by this process. So whenever a virus enters your body, the immune system of your body gets activated as soon as it enters it, and it starts to produce antibodies. And after 14 days, a large pool of antibodies is produced inside your body to fight the infection. So as compared to the swab test, the antibody test detects only post-infection, whereas the swab test detects ongoing or current infections. The swab test is based on the technique called as real-time PCR. The antibody test is an immunoassay test, which means that it is used only to detect antibodies present in your blood against the infection. The swab test can only be performed in a lab because real-time PCR can only be performed by the help of the experts, whereas the antibody test is a do-at-home test. The swab test is costly, as I mentioned it earlier, whereas the antibody test is cheap. The swab test takes around a day or two to give you the final results, whereas the antibody test gives you results in merely 20 to 30 minutes. So whenever the COVID-19 virus enters your body, it infects the cells of your lungs, and when the virus enters, it triggers the immune system, and the immune system gets activated. The activated immune system also starts to activate a branch of immune system called as the B cells. And when the B cells get activated, their primary role is to produce antibodies, and as a result, a bulky and a heavy antibody with multiple sites of attachment is made first. It is called as IgM and is referred to the primary antibody because it is made during the first phase of the infection. And then an antibody is made that is highly soluble and fast and mobile. It is small in size and is called as IgG. And this IgG is called as the secondary antibody of the immune system. So if you look at the chart here, we can see that the primary antibodies that are the IgM are produced early on after the infection, as you can see, and also they die down very early. And when the depletion of IgM is taking place, the IgG antibodies take over, which are called as the secondary antibodies, and their peak shows up around the 28 days after the infection. So the test kit can detect both the IgM and the IgG antibodies and can detect the early phase or the late phase of the infection. We know that the antibodies are designed for a particular antigen and are highly specific to them. But there are some antibodies that are anti to antibodies, and these are called as anti-antibodies, and they bind to the antibodies of other organisms. Creation of anti-antibodies is very simple. For an example, we can take some human IgG and inject them into rabbit's body. The rabbit's immune system will create anti-human antibodies in the rabbit's blood, and we can extract the rabbit's antibody The sample used for the test is a whole blood sample and is taken out by using a lancet by pricking your finger. Then we add the buffer solution to the test kit. The buffer solution is provided in the test kit. The purpose of buffer is it protects the blood from clotting. It is a medium for running the test, and it keeps the human antibodies in the sample intact. So now we can discuss in detailed step-by-step process how this antibody test kit works. In step 1, we add the sample, and this process is called as sample loading, and we all know that whole blood is loaded into the kit. In step 2, we add the buffer solution, and the buffer solution mixes with the sample, and in step 3 they both are allowed to run on the strip for 15 to 20 minutes. The antibody test strip is pre-coated with COVID-19 antigen, and this antigen is very special because it is gold coated, which makes it very easy to visualize. So in the fourth step, the human IgG and IgM binds specifically to the COVID-19 antigen because they are highly specific to it and made for that particular antigen inside the human blood. And as these antigens are gold coated, the gold antigen acts as a tag for the antibodies. So these antibodies are colored in the process. So when this antigen human IgG IgM mixture reaches to the test region of the strip, here in the test region there are anti-human antibodies coated onto the base of the strip. These anti-human antibodies acts as detectors. The antigen human antibody complex is captured by these anti-human antibodies, and they are immobilized in the test area, means they are stuck on the test area, and this conjugate that is formed results in formation of a marking or a line on the test area. We can easily observe that the antigens are used to tag the antibodies for color, whereas anti-human antibodies are used to capture the antibodies for detection. So they both serve different purposes in the test strip. In the next step, you can see that a control line is formed. The control is always farther ahead from the test strip. The control is very special. It tests the movement of sample in the strip, also the effectiveness of buffer solution added, and it also checks if the test is performed correctly. So when we see a control mark, only then we can say that the test is valid. As you can see here, on the control surface there are anti-rabbit antibodies lined up on the strip, which are immobilized and fixed here, and inside the strip there are preloaded rabbit antibodies that are gold coated. So whenever these rabbit antibodies, which are gold coated, reaches the control area, they are captured by the anti-rabbit antibodies and are stuck there. This results in formation of a mark or a line on the control region. So here you can see the diagram of the strip. Firstly, we have the sample pad where we load our whole blood sample that contains the human IgE IgM antibodies. Next, we can see the conjugation pad, and this conjugation pad contains the cold-coated COVID-19 antigens and also the cold-coated rabbit IgG. The M line appears when IgM is present in the sample, and the G line appears when IgG is present in the sample. For the control region, we have cold-coated rabbit antibodies in the conjugation area that acts as tags, and when these cold-coated rabbit antibodies reach the control area, the control surface is lined up with anti-rabbit antibodies, and they capture these rabbit antibodies and give a marking in the control area which completes the test. So when we get the results are as follows. So the results of the test we can see is, if we have an IgM positive test, we have the control and IgM marking. This means that there is an early stage of infection and no IgG is produced yet. So the infection is around 5 to 6 days old. If we see both the IgG and the IgM positive along with the control line, we say that the infection is around 2 weeks old because it has resulted in production of IgG, but the concentration of IgM has not depleted in the blood. But if we only see IgG in the test area along with the control, we say that IgG is positive. This means that the testing is done 1 to 2 months after the infection. And if we only see the control marking and no test marking, we say that the test is negative. And all the bottom tests are invalid because there is no control line visible, and a retest should be done immediately to get the result.